You might want to just rest it in front of the dais. You can table that.
What's the name?
Not anything heavy.
Apart from myself, you mean? Yeah, heavy is rubber. You said, yeah, that's.
Okay, it's most of us in. Right, I'm just going to turn it on now. That's best I can do. Okay, good evening. Sandwich Town Council Human Resources Committee meeting on the 13th of June, Friday the 13th. Hopefully, all goes swimmingly, obviously. So, first off, we would normally elect a chair at this point. Unless somebody's in the room also wants to put their name forward. I know Councillor Wiles is willing to be chair, but he's not here this evening. So we can elect him. I'll check that with the town clerk. But as I'm deputy chair, I'll chair the meeting in his absence. So I'm happy to propose Councillor Wiles.
I'll second it.
And vote.
Yeah. Green from green.
Okay, all greens. Apologies for absences received. Town clerk.
Yes, so we've got apologies from Councillor Wiles, who has a personal commitment.
Thank you very much. Agenda item number 3, declarations of interest. To receive any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest from members in respect of business to be transacted on the agenda. Do we have any? No? Okay, moving on. Agenda item 4, this is attachment 1, minutes of the Human Resources Committee meeting that was held on the 24th of April 2025. Consider any matters rising from those minutes not covered elsewhere in this agenda. And if there are no comments, I'm happy to propose the minutes.
I'll second it.
Thank you. And we've all gone green again.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Oh, one abstention, apologies. Public participation. 20-minute session set aside for members of the public to make representations at the meeting in respect of the business on the agenda. Individual representation should not exceed 5 minutes. Do we have anybody who would like to speak tonight?
No request, Chair.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 6, recruitment of the responsible financial officer. We're being asked to consider and agree the job description for the role of the RFO for the Town Council and Sandwich Tollbridge Fund. The process for recruitment to be agreed by the committee. So we started with a job description that was issued as part of the papers. I know that Councillor Green has had a look at this, using all that's included there has come up with a revised presentation of the information. So I wonder, Councillor Green, if you're happy to lead this part of the agenda.
Yes, I'm quite happy to. Basically, when I looked at the draft that had been issued, there was a long to-do list. So basically what I've done with is I've taken all of those activities on the list. I've put them onto an Excel spreadsheet. I've sorted them into the general categories that you see in the draft there this evening, like financial reporting and so forth. And that's the way I've kind of summarised it. So it is a first draft. I've obviously put the header, the Sandwich Town Council and so forth. So I hope I've done it justice. I've circulated it to the town clerk, and town clerk, you were happy with the job description
Yeah.
as I've prepared, but I'm willing, obviously, to take comments and to amend it. My main concern about the document, to be quite honest, is at the end we have a long list of core competencies and job competencies.
Yeah.
And looking ahead, when we come to evaluate applicants, to have so many competencies to evaluate an applicant against, you know, we will never get an applicant that matches all of those, and we're generating an awful amount of work for ourselves.
I agree.
So I would ask if people have comments or are happy that we kind of look at kind of reducing the overall number just to a handful, you know, 6 or 8 in maximum would be my recommendation. But I didn't feel that I had the kind of wherewithal or authority on my own just to select some out of that list. I hope that makes sense. And
It does.
as I say, I'm willing to take comments.
So, yes,
Well, you want to open the debate? Or,
yeah,
or-
so taking a step back and thinking about how do we get to the point where we can advertise, pace is really important in this. Obviously, the RFO has now been, has left for about 4 weeks, I believe. So we do need to get this out as quickly as possible, but to make sure it's done in the right manner. So thank you very much, Councillor Green, for doing what you've done. What I was just going to say in a broader question is, should we not see that this committee will come back towards the end of next week, and in that window we make sure we've got both adverts and job descriptions circulated, reviewed, and we sign them off in that meeting, because I think that's where we need to get to. It picks up on your point about you not being only on your shoulders, which it can't be. It has to be a committee decision, and I'm just mindful we have the time needed. My specific comment, I suppose, the only thing that I find doesn't flush itself out well enough is the STBF aspect. So I think that needs to be somehow expressed more clearly, because that is a key element of the role. So that's the only thing. I think apart from that, everything's great, and picking up on your points about reducing competencies, I agree with that as well.
Okay, well, you know, the overall responsibilities, it does talk about the council, the Sandwich Toll Bridge Fund, and I have at this stage included the Maddocks, because as we sit here today, and as the job description is going out, the intent is that the RFO here deals with Maddocks, so that's why I've kind of listed. So I've listed them at the top, and I didn't really want to go into a lot more detail because on the Toll Bridge Fund, because if I did, I would have had to put Sandwich Town Council, the Toll Bridge Fund, and Maddocks, and make all different.
I understand that, but a simple thing was relating to the annual budget. Now there's an annual budget for STBF, so I think that should be shown alongside the council's one, to show that there's actually a dual activity needed by the RFO.
Yeah.
So it's simple things, Councillor Green,
Okay.
nothing more than that.
All right.
Councillor Black.
First of all, Councillor Green, I think you've done a first-rate job to pull this together.
Yeah.
It is pretty clear. I've got a few questions here. Very quickly, if we want the person to do the council, the Toll Bridge Fund, and the Maddocks, I'm just wondering if scale point 25 is going to be the right level. Because they're quite significant. Each one's a big significant chunk. And I appreciate we are where we are, but I'm just wondering how much people on scale point 25 are going to say, That's what I don't know, and perhaps Town Clerk will be able to give some guidance on that later.
Well, can I just say, I think for me, the key thing is the amount of money that's being managed over the course of that. And in the advert, the precept is 330,000. There's another 300,000 in income comes in to the council, or is budgeted for the council this year. 625,000 in total. And then Maddocks, if you were to say 100,000. So you're looking at a council turnover that's you know,
750,000.
less than 750,000.
Yeah.
Whereas when you look at somewhere like Folkestone, the precept alone is well over £1 million.
Okay.
So my comment on that point, and we may well have more, is that I think with the Maddox Committee due to meet soon, I think that committee should be talking about the justification for a admin finance support role that is suited to managing a charity.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I don't know how, if people want to send me specific comments, then on the document, or whether we want to have a working session where, you know, the comments come out, because what I'd like to do is just, you know, actually change the document, because the job description is the starting point for the job evaluation.
Oh yes, yeah.
Sorry, Councillor.
Do you want me to quickly run through? I've got about 4 or 5 other points. It's me. Oversee income from investments. I thought that was more the role of the 2 committees looking at overseeing it, and that's why I question that a little bit. Yes, you've got to make sure that we've got them, but I wonder if that's slightly over-egging what the job is. Again, I'm happy to be guided by others, but just when I read it, and I wasn't able to, I apologise, I wasn't able to do that until about 5 o'clock this evening.
Okay, well, you know, maybe it's in the verb, whether it's oversee or manage the income from the, you know, I think it's just a bit of a word finessing there.
Yes, that's what it is, but I'm just trying to... audit and assurance. I wasn't sure, and the assurance bit, I'm not quite sure about audit. Is that not the role of the independent, of the external auditor?
Arrange for the internal audit review.
That's, happy with that.
Yeah.
But when you sit down the core competencies.
Well, that's what I'm saying, these core competencies I want to go through, you know, and as I said, I think we should have maybe 4 core competencies and 4 job competencies at the most.
Okay, well in that case, what I'm happy to do is send something to you the next day or so.
Yeah.
But you've seen sort of, on here I've highlighted them, and I think I'm very much in agreement with what you're saying, that we have a few too many here, and some of them are a little, how are you going to measure them? I would struggle with some of them.
Okay, well, if people would just like to go through them and send me the list or an additional list, and I can circulate a kind of a revised list via email.
We need to obviously bring it back into a meeting because it needs to be.
Could I make a suggestion? I think many of us, could we meet either in advance of the
STC?
Yeah, it's the Tollbridge Fund meeting, isn't it, on Monday? Or you know, to do it, crack it on and do it on Monday.
I don't think that would be. No, you've got to publish an agenda, which needs to have 3 clear days. So we couldn't meet until the earliest would be Wednesday, if it went out today. And it's not going to go out today. So it's Friday.
Yeah, well, you know, well, my apologies, I won't be in the country next Friday.
I'm not available next Friday.
Okay, so it's a week on Monday.
Okay.
Okay, but let's try and get it done earlier rather than later.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Monday's the full council meeting.
Yeah.
So, you know, within the world, I'm not going to be able to stretch to another meeting in front of that one, because that one goes on for, you know, a number of hours. There's a lot to do on that one. It's the AGAR and everything.
Could make a suggestion. Is there anything that we should preclude a member of this committee doing the minutes and servicing it, Jill? I mean, we fully appreciate the workload that you've got. I understand your professional reluctance, please.
I wouldn't condone that. I think with human resources, I think it's important. But I think Monday is, you know, the full council meeting. There's a lot that's going to take a lot of time.
Yeah, of course it is.
And so Tuesday
the 24th.
Yeah.
See what else we can do.
Okay. You know the workload best.
Any comments? Councillor Marie.
I just wanted to say regarding the competencies, the core competencies, maybe it might be a good idea to suggest maybe charity experience, because there can be sensitive running two charities, Alex and the Torbys, maybe a good idea for them even to give an experience in an interview to say that they've had charity experience.
Yeah, fair point. Yeah, thank you.
So what I would ask is, I expect we'll probably map this across to the town clerk role as well, but if today is Friday, if comments can be fed back no later than Wednesday next week, gives enough time to be then turned around
For Tuesday.
So Tuesday, Monday's a clear day, Saturday's a clear day, Friday's a clear day.
Yeah.
So that means the papers need to go out on Thursday.
Yes.
So comments back by Tuesday.
May I ask Jill, is that doable from your viewpoint?
Well, I will do it, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're actually trying to help. I know you've got an awful lot on your plate.
Thank you.
Okay, and if you send me a copy of the agenda, I can update the agenda for you so that you then can go through it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on the RFO role? No. So I think similarly for the town clerk, and I think the test bed was the RFO role in terms of what you've done, Councillor Green. Are you happy to mirror that for the town clerk role, having heard what you've heard now?
Yes, I am indeed. I would ask the town clerk if you could send me the Word file, because I was working off a PDF document.
Yeah.
As I say, I had to shuffle them around,
Yeah.
so it would make it easier. But there's less work to do, I think, on this.
Yeah.
On the
This is more recent. So
yes, because it's more recent and it's it's got the workload categorised into headings as opposed to just a one big long list.
Okay.
I've got some comments here, as you
Yes,
can see,
please.
Councillor Green, and I'll just send them to you.
Yeah,
And so, shall I just circulate them to all members?
you send them to me and copy others by all
Copy others,
means.
yeah, okay. All right, but, okay, I can do that. Right. Okay.
So I just wanted to check that's under. So in terms of the actual advertising approach, because there was documents included in that.
Yes. Yeah, with the costings mapped out.
But we're doing that on adverts, aren't we?
We don't have to, this
No.
this one is in the open session.
So which-
It's a general, it is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we also had a report that related to the recruitment process, and that was to share information from town clerk for the recruitment process for the roles of RFO and town clerk. We've been asked to consider the recruitment process and agree the style of the advertisement and where the advertisements will be placed to attract applications for both RFO and town clerk. So I would ask town clerk first of all, because we've all had an opportunity to look at this, and the costs vary from zero to significant, shall we say. So it would be good to get town clerk's view on this, and then we can have a conversation about that.
Yes, of course. So with people in these roles, like the town clerk and the RFO, if they are already in the profession, they will look to the Kent Association of Local Councils if they're in Kent. If they're further afield, the National Association of Local Councils and the Society of Local Council Clerks, because that's where clerks tend to look predominantly. So, I mean, my suggestion was that now, CALC you don't pay for, so that's, automatic, I would think, to include that.
Yeah.
So then really, it's whether or not you feel you want to advertise in NAB or SLC or one of them instead of both of them. And my suggestion was to the Mayor that you might look to the SLCC, not particularly with NAB, see what response you get, in the first 3 or 4 weeks. And then if you wanted to, you could then look to advertise wider, to NAB. I think at least one of them, and SLCC would be the one I think people would tend to gravitate to.
That makes sense to me, and I'd be happy to support that.
Any other comments?
The only question about that is, we've got a cast our net sufficiently wide, and maybe the SLCC may be the way to do that, but are we in a position to pay relocation? Because if we're casting our net very wide, in that case, then it's going to be, I can see why the reason for calc. I mean, I personally prefer it now, but if we're not going to be in that situation, fair enough. Well, let's see how it plays out. Then let's go for calc and SLCC.
No one would be expecting you to pay relocation. If somebody applies, it's their choice, and they might choose to move to the area. Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's just I've seen on a couple of other adverts for other places, admittedly larger councils.
I was going to say that.
Yeah.
The very big ones. It's not
yes.
normal.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that guidance.
Yeah.
Okay. The only other question I've got is any person like yourself, any town clerk, professional town clerk, is going to be on a 3-month notice period. Very unlikely to be anything less than 3 months. So some might even have longer, but I doubted it at parish and small town level. What is the likelihood of being able to get anybody in an interim role? Because there will be a gap, inevitably, because if the person has to give 3 months notice, even if we went from a standing start now, we'd still have a gap. So I do think this, it's not for a decision today, but I'm raising the question formally, that what do we do in terms of interim, and are there people available who are competent? There have been issues in the past, and we understand that. That, I think, is something that needs to be looked at very carefully. And then there's more internal discussions about how we have a welcoming environment and talk to people and the way we actually do it. Because what I'm used to is when you're recruiting somebody, say at the university, and you're looking for a finance director, for example, you would tend to bring in a finance director from another university because they have the technical skills. They're not making the final decision, but they can say, this really is not the best, you really want a full chartered accountant rather than some other kind of accountant, that kind of thing, and also to test someone's real experience. Again, I think that's a decision to be taken at the next meeting, but I would think that's the kind of thing we need to have on the agenda. Do we make it a bit broader? And I'm sure that's not very common in local authorities, but I don't know. Certainly in a whole number of other sectors, where it's a specialist person and a particular professional skill, as with town clerk, you may want to think about that.
Yeah, I'm kind of in agreement about having a kind of somebody as a recruitment, to help us with recruitment. It doesn't necessarily have to be kind of a paid thing, but when it comes to interviewing, who's actually going to do the interviewing? So I just think we need to have, who's going to review all of the CVs? I don't know whether we're going to get 3 CVs or 53 CVs. And if it's 53 CVs, it's a mountainous workload, but it's got to be done in a consistent basis. So I just think our whole kind of strategy for the recruitment process and who does what, we do need to have some discussion and agree. The first kick of the ball is the job description and the vacancy advert, but then we need to be prepared so that we do not cause further delays down the line because we haven't got our act together.
Yeah, I mean, that can work. Obviously, the critical thing is for us to get the adverts out as soon as we've got the job descriptions. Some of the questions I've asked are secondary, or outcome in the second order of priority.
And I'm conscious that for the town clerk, you've got enough of a workload, but the prospect of having to screen 2 sets of applicants, one for the RFO and one for your own job, it just seems to me to be overwhelming. And I'm not really sure that, you know, we should be placing that burden on the town clerk. That's why I like Councillor Black's suggestion about getting, you know, maybe borrowing somebody from one of the other councils or something like that to help us with the process.
Do you have any observations on that, Town Clerk?
Only that I didn't particularly want to be involved with the recruitment of the town clerk.
Yeah.
No.
I really don't want to be involved in that.
Understand.
The RFO I don't mind assisting with, and obviously I'm mindful that, you know, I'm still going to be serving all the committees and meetings until I go. So I think it's sensible to think about, you know, what the workload potentially may be from both roles being advertised.
And could you please give some thought as to when would be the optimum point to get in an interim or some cover, or how some of your work could be delegated to bring on the assistant town clerk or whatever? We did, because if we are going to look for an interim, you know, again, that's another recruitment process that will take some time. I mean, bearing in mind the recent experience that you were here as an interim for how many months before appointment?
4 months.
Sorry?
4 months.
4
Yeah, it
months.
was April, May, June, July. April, May, June, July.
Anything history, is it, Joe?
I think it was 4 or 5 months. I think it was 4 months. Yes, it was 4 months. Yeah. Yeah, no, and that, you know, that's hard because I was juggling the other council as well. So,
Yes.
you know, and that isn't something that, you know, many people would do. There is the locum service. I've spoken to the mayor about that.
Oh, good.
That's a locum service, so there are qualified clerks available that you can have, you know, for a fixed period. So you could contact SLCC; they offer that service. So that's another.
I think that would be extremely useful because I'm very concerned about sheer workload, the availability of people, and we're coming right to the slap bang in the middle of summer when a lot of people will not be so available.
Yeah. So we need to think about the timing, and I think a paper needs to be brought forward because it's obviously going to involve the council in unbudgeted expense at the moment.
Yeah.
Effectively paying 2 salaries for a town clerk. So I don't know if we can clarify that and a paper could be brought to the town council for the end of this month. A decision on the 24th as to the date we bring in an interim.
The issue, well, and who would do that report is the first question. The timings for STC are that
Very
papers are
short.
going out on
Wednesday.
Wednesday next
Wednesday
week.
next week.
The HR committee won't have discussed it, so there's a lot of pressures on to try and achieve very tight deadlines.
I mean, you can have an extraordinary town council meeting.
That's a possibility.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure. I would have thought we need to have a discussion with you, Jill, as to when your actual D-Day is, bearing in mind if you have any holidays to take and so forth before your D-Day, and whether you're going to take those immediately before your D-Day or, you know, or whenever, the timing of those. So I think I can't see why we can't prepare a short report for next Wednesday, and I'm quite happy to work on that.
I'm happy to give you some assistance with that if you feel that's right, Councillor Green. I would have thought what we'd be asking STC on Monday, a week on Monday, is do you approve in principle, yes or no? The detail that should not be theirs, it's too large a committee. But do you agree in principle? These seem to be the ballpark dates and ballpark figures that we can work to. Do you think you and I could pull something together?
Good, yeah.
Yeah, so flight path from that meeting to the end of the recruitment and hopefully an appointment is what we needed.
Yeah.
The number of weeks, I did a quick tally before this meeting, and The maximum is 15 weeks, but the likelihood is more likely 12 weeks we've got available to start the process and complete in terms of hopefully successful candidates, certainly for the town clerk.
I'm sorry, the other thing, town clerk, is we do need your advice as to any work that could be delegated to the assistant town clerk at the moment, because, you know, I personally would like to see us develop her, you know, so that, you know, she progresses her career.
Well, I will have more of a detailed discussion in confidential, but all I would say is at the moment there isn't anybody to delegate to. Everybody is at capacity, so I'll go into that in more detail once we get to the closed session.
So, just one last question. Is it, Jill, turning to you for your input, is it easier to get interim people for the finance role than the larger role of town clerk? Because again, this is trying to prioritise so we really get the most. What's your opinion? I mean, we've got an interim finance person at the moment.
Yes.
Without going to discussion about suitability, in your experience, is it easier to get people like that for an interim role than the locum service? And the quality of the locum service, I think, is the other issue, isn't it? Of course, someone's dealt with a very small parish and they suddenly get this thing.
Yes,
chalk and cheese,
exactly,
isn't it?
exactly. So you can have that conversation with SLCC. You can tell them, you know, what the background of the council is, what sort of assets and budgets and things that the person's expecting. So they will field, you know, and give you suggestions, exactly, suitably, you know, experienced people. With the RFO role, I mean, we've gone to the agency. That the person we've got at the moment is through the agency, and it's much more easy on the RFO side of things. You know, even if they haven't had local government experience, you know,
The fundamentals.
Exactly, accountancy fundamentally, you know, is they've got those credentials and experience.
I think you've answered the question.
But I am working with the interim RFO because obviously there are, you know,
Specific,
exactly.
specific things that this
Yeah.
council
But perhaps
does.
clearly it's not his particular
No,
field.
exactly. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Murray.
Yeah, just wanted to say, although we do have a time frame, I respect the time frame that we have. This feels to me it looks a bit rushed, in my opinion.
You don't want to do
No, and we want to get it right. We want to make sure we get it right. I do, and obviously because we're still starting off civic year for 25, so we've got the Talbot's Fund annual town meeting on Monday, and then also the full council meeting the week after is doing all of our, obviously re-signing all our licences, etc. I do feel that with the workload the town clerks has, maybe it'd be a good idea to call an extraordinary meeting, STC meeting, after the full council meeting in 2 weeks. It's a bit delayed. In the process, we can work in the background to make sure we get it right. Bring the reports to the council, say yes, do this, and then we can get the ball rolling. I just do feel it's a little bit rushed.
I think you're right. I don't know, Councillor Tomlins, do you have any observations?
I suppose I'm just sat here thinking, I know it sounds really negative, it seems quite an impossible challenge in terms of fitting everything in with the reduced staffing and the workload of the town clerk, and I don't really have any solutions or suggestions.
So I think from what I'm
just feels
hearing,
a bit overwhelming.
my suggestion would be, but it's only mine and majority rules, is that we actually have that meeting we suggested at the HR committee on that Tuesday. We bring the material that you're going to work up with the job descriptions into that meeting. I'm just very hesitant about going to a full STC if we have got a half-baked story that we haven't discussed and agreed. I much prefer we do it thoroughly rather than, and I think we have to look, picking up on your points, both of your points, I think we have to really build in that contingency around locum resource probably, because I think the challenge, picking up on your point, I think the challenge we could lose grip of very quickly, and we shouldn't be starting out on something we know. So if we found a town clerk that wanted to join us, they may well turn around to us and say, I will join you, but I've got a 3-month notice period elsewhere. And we've only got 3 months to get something landed, and so I can just see it's fraught with difficulty, so let's do it properly and make sure the contingency is in place rather than getting into a panic situation at the end.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, your points are very good. Obviously.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I've got a slightly different view. If we're doing it, we're going to do it proper.
Yeah.
The question is, are we going to do it quickly, or are we going to do it, you know, at a natural time frame? To be quite honest, I'm really frustrated and disappointed that the town, the RFO handed a notice in weeks ago, has left, and we still haven't got the advert out for her replacement.
Yeah.
You know, for me, that's not acceptable. It's not acceptable performance by us as councillors.
No.
And secondly, I would say, in respect of the town clerk who's leaving at the end of September, is my understanding.
Yeah.
If we don't get a decision in June, at the June Town Council meeting about the timing of the interim replacement, the decision won't be until July. We're then going to be trying to recruit somebody in August, and we'll have lost our town clerk in September without any handover.
So that wasn't the point I made. I picked up on the point about an extraordinary meeting, is that we actually dealt with it properly within this group first. And then if from that we are really confident, then we should consider an extraordinary meeting being called to deal specifically with the issue. So therefore it drops in to this in the cycle.
The extraordinary meeting is to deal specifically with what issue?
Well, it depends what we decide at the next meeting with this group, because I don't think we've yet crystallised exactly
But
what
if
we want.
we're going to do this paper for next week, we're going to draft a paper about the timing of the recruitment of an interim town clerk.
Right, so was it for an interim?
It's for an interim town clerk, yeah. We need
That's
to get the council's
Apologies,
approval.
I thought I heard the recruitment of the town clerk timeline.
Well,
You can break it into sections. You've got one very urgent thing, which is we have a very limited time frame for a town clerk.
Yes.
We're never going to recruit a good, competent town clerk before the end of September. That isn't going to happen. So therefore, you go straight back to how do we, in the short run, get a good interim? What do we need to do? Do we need to do something similar for the RFO? And hearing what the town clerk said, it may be slightly easier on the RFO side than the town clerk side. Once we've got that plan in place, then we have part two of the plan, which is now how are we going to handle the much more complex thing, which will inevitably run into October, and in fact, possibly even later, because you've got this whacking break time, really. So August and September, certainly the first 2 weeks in September, are usually pretty dead for recruitment because so many people are on holiday, and we perhaps need a core of people. I don't know how many, again, perhaps suggest that in the paper, who can pick up and run with it. So if one person is not available, we've got another core, 3 or 4 people who can continue and are fully in the loop to run this forward. And that's what you would do in other organisations, have this kind of thing and have the flexibility. I don't suggest this group needs to be any more than 5 people, whether it's all 5 of us here and the Council of Wales or not is another matter. But I think we could, that's, to my mind, get that agreed at Mondays, on Monday. That gives us the go-ahead. That allows us on Tuesday to hammer this out in much more detail for what we're going to take forward. And then if we then need an extraordinary meeting to agree the other parts, including expenditure, then we can do that, but you won't be under quite sort of pressure. Because if you want to have an extraordinary meeting, the earliest now you can probably do it is probably a week today, Friday. By the time you get paid.
I don't think we're talking about an extraordinary meeting as a stopgap. So can you explain to me what the report will cover in its scope?
Right, well, from my point of view, what I will be doing is setting out an outline recruitment process for the permanent town clerk. So if we as a group get ourselves together, it's going to be another 2 weeks or something like that before the advert actually goes out for that town clerk. It's going to be the end of August and into middle of September before we've evaluated responses, and then if you take 3 months for the actual finalisation of the package and so forth. So there's a programme thing. So for me, the most realistic time for the appointment of a permanent town clerk, or to have a permanent town clerk in place, is going to be January of next year. So now we've got to fill the gap with an interim between sometime, I don't know when, maybe at the beginning of August, maybe the middle of August, maybe the 1st of September, depending upon the amount of handover time that's kind of needed. And that's what we need to try and discuss with Jill in terms of when her holidays are and so forth. And that comes with a financial implication. And so the town council need to be aware that there's going to be an impact of XK on the budget. So those are the two things. That's what the paper is going to say, from my point of view.
No, I agree with that. That's what I think we've got to do. The sequence we bring it to the full council is not matter, but you've got to have the overall plan, and then to get to that overall plan, we need an interim arrangement.
Okay, so I would ask that you involve me in that, because I think what we need to do is, if we're going to take it to STC, we need to be clear about cost impact. So the town clerk may be able to help us out around the interim role, because I think we can't ask 16 councils to decide without it. A clear view of what it means financially.
No, absolutely. So that's what the paper is going to.
Well, I'm thinking on similar lines.
Yeah.
Well, differences in detail.
Okay.
Just to clarify, there's no guarantee that there would be an interim town clerk available. That's not a given. It's more likely with the RFO, but less likely.
Well, the town clerk explained that there are locums, and they're suitable and available.
So there's always that backup plan. There's always that.
There is that. No, you're right. There is not a guarantee, but we will try to develop a plan which is as robust as we can develop it, given our present circumstances and where we are in the country.
I think it would take the panic away.
So
in terms of
what I would
knowing that
do
you've
is,
got one, you have to have a.
what I'll do is a feeder into the report is with the town clerk, make inquiries with SLCC around the what needs to be done in terms of the locum, likely availability,
And the price range.
and the price range.
Because otherwise it's going to impact on everything, isn't it?
Correct,
It's going to
yes.
put everything back. Not just recruitment.
We've got a bit of a job ahead of us.
So let's go back to where this started the conversation. We were talking about how we were going to advertise the job. And I think we agreed that we were going to advertise it using calc. This is for both roles, isn't it? So the calc, but the thing is there will be separate adverts and we'll be charged separately for them, so we need to recognise that. And we're also going to use SLCC.
For both or just one?
So, I mean, I would suggest both, and I mean, even if, when I say bronze level.
Bronze level gives you listing on the SLCC website. Then there's the duration question. So it ranges, and my personal view is 3 to 4 weeks. It shouldn't be on for 1 to 2 weeks, I don't think, because it can be missed.
Somebody's on holiday.
I assume we're not a smaller council, discounted council.
75k.
Yes, sorry, I did see that, yes.
But you are a member.
Oh, it's close, we are a member, yes. So, it would be, so this should be included in the report as well, to get the council, the full council to agree. A 4-week bronze advert, which would be ×2, is £324 plus VAT. So that's about £700-800. We've got to pay.
We have to do it. We have no choice.
Okay. So that, we've agreed how we're going to advertise it, that can go into the report. We've agreed that there's going to be an interim process alongside the permanent timeline. And we've also agreed that we're going to come back on Tuesday, the day after STC, to review and sign off the job description and advert. So we then have got that tick in the box for those to go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah? I'm happy to propose all of that. You've got it written down. Anybody have a second? Councillor Black?
Agreed.
Great. Yeah, I've got two agendas missing. Thank you. So we've covered all of the items that are going to be in the public section of the meeting. So the proposal is that we move the next items as confidential matters, and that's to resolve under the Public Bodies Admissions to Meetings Act 1960 and in accordance with Standing Order 5.1.2 to exclude the press and public on the grounds that publicity will be prejudicial to the public interest by reason of the confidential nature of the business to be transacted. One, information relating to a particular employee or a particular office holder under the authority. You will need to sign on that.
Propose to go to confidential.
Yeah, I'll just cover this, so we're actually going to take into confidential,
Okay,
so it's on camera. We're going to receive confidential minutes from the HR Committee meeting held on the 24th of April 2025 and to consider any matters arising from those minutes not covered elsewhere in the agenda. We're going to have under agenda item 9, probation review and recommendation for the town clerk for property manager role updates. And the decision will be required on that in a second. And then 10, town clerk reports to share confidential verbal report outline staffing matters, and we'll be asked to receive and note that report. So there are 3 separate items there. I'm happy to propose that all 3 of them should go into confidence, and anybody would like to oppose that? No. No? Somebody like to second that? Councillor Reid did. Good vote. Thank you very much. And the date of the next meeting was the 7th of July, but we've now agreed in this meeting we're going to come back on Tuesday the 24th of June. Okay, so public section of the meeting is now closed.